Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. New Mexico nights have a way of swallowing you whole. The darkness is thick, the kind that presses against your windshield and makes the high beams feel useless. Out there, past the last gas station and the scattered trailer homes, there's nothing but miles of empty desert. No streetlights, no houses, just you, the road, and whatever lives beyond the headlights. I never believed in skinwalkers. I'd heard the stories, of course. Everyone around here has. My friend David, who's Navajo, warned me once. If you see something strange on the road at night, don't stop. Don't acknowledge it. Just keep driving. I thought it was just old superstition, but that was before the night I saw him. It was late, probably close to 2 a.m. I was driving home from a friend's place, a little buzzed on cheap beer, but not drunk. The road was dead. No other cars. No signs of life. Just my old sedan humming along at a steady 60. Then I saw him. A man standing by the side of the road, just past a mile marker. He was tall and thin, wearing a hoodie and jeans, hands hanging at his sides. His face was in shadow, his features lost in the glow of my headlights. As I approached, he lifted one hand in a slow, deliberate wave. Something about it made my skin crawl. Maybe it was the way his fingers curled. Too stiff, too precise. Maybe it was the unnatural stillness of his body, like a mannequin waiting to be posed. But I didn't stop. I didn't even ease off the gas. I just passed him, gripping the wheel tighter, telling myself it was nothing. A hitchhiker, maybe. A drifter. Someone who'd had too much to drink and wandered too far from town. Then I checked my rearview mirror. He was gone. Not walking. Not fading into the darkness. Just gone. Like he had never been there at all. I felt a sick twist in my gut. My mind scrambled for a reasonable explanation. But before I could land on one, my headlights swept over the next mile marker. And there he was, standing in the exact same pose. The hoodie, the jeans, the stiff wave. My breath hitched. My foot pressed harder on the gas. That was impossible. There was no way he could have made it there before me. No car, no bike. No sound of footsteps running through the desert. I stared ahead, refusing to look at him again, but my hands were slick on the wheel. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Mile marker after mile marker, I didn't look until I did, and when I did, my stomach dropped. He was still there, only now he was grinning, wide. Too wide, like his mouth had been carved into his face. His teeth gleamed in the headlights, too white, too sharp. I slammed my foot down, pushing the car faster. 80, then 90. The engine whined, tires humming against the asphalt. But he kept pace. I didn't dare check again. I knew he'd still be there, watching. Smiling. I flew past the last stretch of desert before the turnoff to my house, gravel spitting as I tore into my driveway. I barely got the car in park before I jumped out, running inside, slamming the door behind me. I locked it, every lock, every window, pulled the curtains tight, and then I waited. I don't know for how long, maybe an hour. Maybe until the sun started to rise. I kept expecting to hear a knock on the door, a voice calling my name, but there was nothing, just silence. The next morning, I told David. He listened, his face unreadable, and when I finished, he just nodded. "You saw a skinwalker," he said, "and you did the right thing by not stopping." I wanted to laugh, to tell him it wasn't real, but I couldn't, because I knew that if I had stopped, if I had rolled down my window, if I had let him get close enough to speak, I wouldn't be here to tell this story. Story 2. I was 12 the summer I saw it. My parents had sent me to my grandparents' ranch in Arizona for the season, and I remember thinking it was the most boring place on earth. Nothing but dry, endless land stretching for miles, a small house that smelled of old wood and sun-baked dust, and a barn that had stood for longer than anyone in my family could remember. I used to play in that barn when I was younger, but as I got older, I started avoiding it. Something about it felt wrong. The air inside was always just a little too still, a little too heavy. The horses refused to go near it. My grandmother wouldn't even look at it. And my grandfather, well, he never talked about it, but I'd catch him watching it sometimes, his face set in a hard, unreadable expression. That night, we were sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the last bit of daylight bleed out over the horizon. The crickets had just started their song, and the air was cooling off when we heard it. A noise from the barn. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't a raccoon or some other animal. It was something big, a heavy rustling sound like something shifting inside. Grandpa went still. He reached for the rifle that was always leaning by the door and stood up. "Stay here," he said. But I was 12 and 12-year-olds don't listen. I followed him, staying a few steps behind, my heart thudding in my chest. The barn loomed ahead of us, a black silhouette against the deep purple sky. The door was cracked open, just barely. A thin sliver of moonlight cut into the darkness inside. Grandpa raised the rifle. "Who's in there?" Silence. Then we heard a growl. It started deep, vibrating in my chest, then rose into something wrong. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't human. It was somewhere in between, like a voice that had forgotten what shape it was supposed to take. Something moved. The shadows shifted, and then it crawled out. At first, I thought it was a man. It had arms and legs, but they were too long, too thin. Its spine arched unnaturally, its limbs folding like a spider's as it moved. Its head twitched in jerky, unnatural motions, like it was still figuring out how to use its body. And then it looked at us. Its eyes, God, its eyes. They glowed, but not like an animal's. Not like something reflecting light. They burned, too bright, pale circles in the darkness, locked onto us with something that wasn't curiosity. It was hunger. Grandpa fired. The explosion of the gunshot shattered the night. The thing screamed, a high, wailing sound that made my stomach flip, made my teeth ache. Then it moved. It didn't run. It bolted, on all fours like a spider, faster than anything I'd ever seen, limbs bending the wrong way, body twitching with every step. It didn't make a sound as it disappeared into the desert, its glowing eyes the last thing to fade into the night. Grandpa grabbed me by the arm, hard enough to hurt, and pulled me back toward the house. He slammed the door, locked every bolt, then went to the kitchen and grabbed something from the cupboard, a bag of fine, white powder. He poured a thick line of it across the threshold. then did the same at every window. I watched, still shaking. What was that? I finally asked. Grandpa didn't answer. He just checked the locks one more time, then sat in his chair by the door, rifle across his lap. And he stayed there all night. He never talked about it again. The next morning, I asked Grandma about the white powder, and she just muttered something about keeping things out. I stopped asking after that. I never saw the thing again, but sometimes, late at night, when the wind was still, I swore I could hear something moving out there just beyond the barn. Something watching, waiting, and every time I made sure to stay inside. Story 3. I don't go camping anymore. Not alone. Not with friends. Not even at those cozy little campgrounds where kids roast marshmallows and dads struggle with tent poles. I used to love it though. The quiet, the stillness of nature, the feeling of being untethered from the world. There was something about waking up to the sound of wind moving through the trees, with nothing but miles of wilderness around you, that made you feel free. But freedom has a cost. I learned that one night in Utah, near the Navajo Nation. It was late October, just before the real cold set in, when the nights were crisp but not unbearable. I had set up my tent in a clearing not far from a small creek. The first night was perfect. Just me, the stars, and the crackle of my fire. The second night, though, that was when I heard it, my name. It came from the trees. At first, I thought I imagined it. A trick of the wind, maybe, or the distant call of some nocturnal bird. But then I heard it again, closer. It wasn't loud. If anything, it was soft, almost gentle. A woman's voice, speaking just above a whisper. But here's the thing. I was alone. I froze. The fire popped, embers spitting into the air, but the night beyond the trees was silent. No footsteps, no rustling, just the sound of my own breathing. I picked up my flashlight, gripping it so tightly my fingers ached. Slowly, I turned it toward the woods, the beam cutting through the darkness. Nothing, just trees. But then movement, a shape just beyond the reach of the light. It stepped forward out of the shadows, and for a second, just a second, I thought it was a woman. But something was wrong. She was too tall. Not unnaturally tall, just off. Her arms were long, hanging at her sides like they didn't quite belong to her. Her head tilted slightly, as if she was studying me. Her dress, if you could call it that, was old, tattered, the fabric hanging off her thin frame like dead skin. And her face, God, her face, pale, too pale, like something that had been hiding from the sun for years. And her mouth, it was too wide, stretched, like she was smiling but had forgotten how. Then she said my name again, and this time, I swear to you it sounded wrong, like someone trying to mimic my voice, like a recording played back, just a little too slow. I took a step back. She took a step forward. Something in my gut told me not to speak, not to answer. I turned off the flashlight. I don't know why I did it. Maybe some primal instinct told me she could only see me if I could see her. Maybe I just couldn't bear to look at that face any longer. But the second the light went out, I heard movement. Fast. Too fast. Branches snapping. Leaves crunching. Something rushing toward me. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't pack. I just turned and bolted for my car, crashing through the underbrush, my boots slamming against the dirt. The whole time, I could hear her behind me. Too close. Too fast. I don't remember unlocking the car. I don't remember starting it. All I remember is slamming the door shut and peeling out onto that dirt road, my headlights cutting through the night. I didn't stop. Not when I hit the main highway. Not when I reached the nearest town. Some little place I don't even remember the name of. I pulled into a gas station and just sat there, hands shaking on the wheel, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. That's when I noticed something. My driver's side window, there were streaks on it, like someone had dragged their fingers down the glass. I sat there until the sun came up, too scared to move, too scared to breathe. When the gas station opened, I went inside. I must have looked half crazy because the guy behind the counter gave me that look. You know, the one, like he was debating whether to call the cops or just ignore me. I told him what happened. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed to say it out loud to make it real. He didn't react the way I expected. He didn't laugh. He didn't look at me like I was crazy. He just nodded real slow and said, "You're lucky." I swallowed, my throat dry. Lucky. He didn't answer at first. Just grabbed a rag, started wiping down the counter like he was thinking. Then he said, "If you had answered it, it would have taken you." I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't want to know. I just left, and I never went camping again.